Let's start with the provincial states of Indo-Islamic architecture. So what does that mean? Is basically we know that Tughlaq dynasty was invaded by the Timur of Samarkand, and after he invaded, this weakened a lot in its power, and the several other provincial ministers that was attached to the sultanate, that was attached to the Tughlaq dynasty, they sought independence, and they had their own power going on. So we are going to talk about those provincial states now. So let us start with Ahmad Shahi architecture. So this is basically from Gujarat. So in and around Gujarat, and the people, the craftsmen in Gujarat, even before the Islamic invasion, they worked extensively on stone, and that was still followed in a lot of the other structures. So especially during the Islamic reign, under the Ahmad Shahi architecture school, so they used a lot of false domes and arches were used, and their first mosque, which is the Ahmad Shahi mosque, this mosque used columns from existing temples. Now this usage of materials from existing temple was something that we saw in the slave dynasty, so remember that. And they used lot of stone jali work. So this is an example of stone jali work with the tree and its motifs going around, and this work, the stone jali work, it is called as Shigrafkari work. Shigrafkari work. And Ahmad Shahi next built his tomb next to the mosque. So he built his tomb adjacent to the mosque, and that led to the construction of Rauza construction in which was mostly found in the Ahmedabad region and other Gujarat regions. So Rauza is something that we saw in the last video as well. So if a tomb and a mosque are within the same compound, it's called Rauza. So when Ahmad Shahi built his tomb next to the mosque, that led to other people copying that same style as well, and that was what led to the Rauza construction. And another important feature of the Ahmad Shahi architecture is the shaking minarets. So this is also important. Now shaking minarets. So this is an example of shaking minarets. This is our Siddhi Bashir mosque in Ahmedabad. So what are shaking minarets means? It is believed that when you shake one minaret, the other also starts vibrating, and the space between them also starts vibrating. So this is shaking minarets of Siddhi Bashir mosque, and these are the important features of the Ahmad Shahi architecture. Now let's move on to the other prominence state, which is Malwa architecture. Now this is mostly central India, and This used a lot of features from the Tughlaq dynasty, like the battered walls, the arch plus beam combination. And this is something that is found in the Ghiyasuddin tomb that I forgot to mention in the last video. So what is that is, they have your arch, but you also have your beam going on. So that is something that they use, like this is covered and this is your beam going on and your arch. So they use the arch plus beam structure like the Tughlaq dynasty, and they had the knack for creating turquoise blue glazed tiles. So let us see some examples now. This is Jahaz Mahal. So Jahaz means ship, and as the name represents, this Mahal has a lake in the front and back of it. So it has two lakes, one on the front and one on the back, and that's why it got its name Jahaz Mahal. And another example is this. This is Hindola Mahal, and this is also known as Swing Mahal. This got its name swing because of these sloping walls, which is a feature we saw in the Ghiyasuddin tomb as well. So it has sloping walls, and this was used as an audience hall. So that is about our Malwa architecture. Then let's move on to Sharqi. So Sharqi architecture is mainly in the region of Jaunpur, which is in UP. And one important feature of them is that they have multi-storied stone screen for welcome. So that is, see, this this is the stone screen covering the Jama Masjid or Jami Masjid in Jaunpur. And this stone screen is said to be 5-story high. 5-story high, that it even covers the dome of the masjid. So that is very famous in the Sharqi architecture, and is famously found in, it is in the region of Jaunpur, Uttar Pradesh. Then we have Bengal architecture provenance. So Bengal architecture, just like the temple, they have extensive use of materials that is very local to them. So they used a lot of mud, wood, terracotta and other stuff. So they used terracotta, stone, timber, etc. And sometimes they even took inspiration from the traditional huts of Bengal, just like how they took inspiration from traditional huts for the temple constructions. And if you see the mosques, the mosques could not be open. So when we talked about the parts of a mosque, we talked about a courtyard called as the Sam. So because of the temperature that is found in Bengal, which has like high rains and hot summers, it could not be open. So they usually covered it and examples could be Adina Mosque, which is in ruins now, and another example is this. This is Ikhlaqi tomb, Bengal. Then we can move on to our Bahmani architecture. So Bahmani architecture is mostly in the region Karnataka, more so in Bijapur. And so some of the important structures, or okay, before structures, they infused styles of Persia, Turkey, Syria, and with Islam, and sometimes even certain features from the South Indian temple is also mixed. So they have styles from Persia, Turkey, Syria, sometimes, not often, sometimes temple structures of the South India was also inspired. Now if we talk about important structures of Bahmani architecture, we have our Golconda Fort and Ibrahim Rauza. Now Rauza, we talked about it, a tomb and a mosque in the same compound is called a Rauza, and another example is Gol Gumbaj. This is Gol Gumbaj. And the dome, it is the second largest in the world. The first largest being St. Peter's Dome. And okay, so this is the second largest dome in the world, and this has a space called the Whispering Hall just below the dome. It has a space called Whispering Hall, and it is known for its echo. So it has excellent echo there, and this dome, it is okay. This dome, it is supported on 8 arches. That is, this is like 2 pendantives intersecting, 2 intersecting pendentives. 2 intersecting pendentives are used for the dome to rest on it. So how it is, you have an arch here, arch. So this itself forms 1, 2, 3, 4 arch, and the other are the sides. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So you have 8 arches, that is 2 intersecting pendentives, and the dome is rested on that. And the material that is predominantly used here is grey basalt. So that is about Bahmani architecture. Now we can move on to Awadhi. So Awadhi architecture is from the region of Lucknow. And some important features of Awadhi architecture is that they used fish as an auspicious and decorative motif. And we know that according to the belief of Islam, they don't use any living beings in the decorations, but here fish is used as a decorative motif. and huge vaulted roof is used for uninterrupted spaces. So wall roofs was very famous in Awadhi architecture, and they use something called baradari as well, introduction of baradari. So what is baradari? This is baradari. Baradari, or this 12 doorway pavilion that could be said it was introduced in the Awadhi architecture era. So you can see this like 1, 2, 3 and 1, 2, 3 on all the 4 sides. So this is baradari. Then they had something called labyrinth, or bulbulaya. And labyrinth or bulbulaya, this is like a maze, like structure. It's like a maze, and that was famous for Awadhi architecture. Like this maze, like or bulbulaya, was found in the Bara Imambara. Now we talk about this Imambara. Imambara is like a hall for the people to assemble for the morning congregation of Imam Hussain. So Bara Imambara has this bulbulaya, which is like a labyrinth or maze-like structures. So this is how one of the few walls that I found, and also acts as a labyrinth here. Huge maze going on, and they also had underground chambers called as Thaikanas. So Thaikanas, underground chambers were used, and so this is Rumi Darwaza, and this was the west entrance to Bara Imambara. And this was very famous because first thing is it has a curved pishtak. So what is a curved pishtak? Before coming here, let me talk about what is a pishtak. So okay, in gateways, this rectangular structure is your pishtak, and the curved vault, this curved half vault or half domed, vaulted or domed structure that has 3 walls and one side open. So this part, it's called Livan or Ivan. So it has 2 names. So Livan or Ivan. So this is Pishtak and this is Livan or Ivan. So let's go back to our Awadhi architecture. You can see the Pishtak here is curved. So that was very famous. And not just that, these Pishtak were adorned with finials. So these were the finials, and this finials at that time when it was constructed used to be spouts for water. So they were spouts for water, and it has a curved pishtak. So that's about Awadhi architecture. Now let's move on to Punjab. Punjab there is not very distinctive features about that, but let's just know that this housed a lot of caravanserai or khanqah that we saw in the last video, which means inn for the travelers. So along the Grand Trunk Road, there were a lot of quadrangular planned serais. For example, the Amanat Khan Serai, Dakini Sarai, and etc. And most of their constructions used thin bricks and sometimes even wood. So that's about Punjab. And now let's move on to Kashmir. So Kashmir, we all know it's famous for its garden. So they had Shalimar Garden and many such gardens over there. But if we look for buildings, they used a lot of woodwork. And they also had something called as zundab, or it's also called as a moon box window or a moon box balcony. Now these moon box balcony or zundab or these projecting balconies that are that are sometimes protruded out of your building structure. So this is zundab. And they also use two types of construction system because of seismic issues. So they had tuck construction, which means your trapeations, that is your lintels, your beams are tied to horizontal timbers. So that gives them a sort of flexibility. So this is an example of tuck construction. You can see timber bands going on, so that is tuck construction. The another construction that was used here is Daji Diwari style construction. So now these are timber frames made, and then rubble masonry is used in the middle. So that is the Daji Diwari style. Now few other things about the Mughal architecture before we end it. In place of walls or sometimes domes or even in squinches or pendentives, they use a decoration system called as mukbarana. Now these mukbarana can be into two categories. One is this, which is a honeycomb carving here, and the other is this, which is a stalactite carving. So that is mukbarana. And then into Indo Saracenic architecture, and let's start with the name itself. So James Ferguson professed the term Indo Saracenic, which was later coined as Indo Saracenic. And so Indo Saracenic architecture or Indo Saracenic architecture is basically the architecture that was found in India during the British Empire time, and it's a mix of Indian style plus the neoclassical style of the British. So British had four main cities that they ruled in India. we have Chennai, then Kolkata, Mumbai, and finally Delhi. And these are the cities that we'll be looking today. So let's start with Chennai. Chennai has the oldest British church. So this is that, which is Saint Mary's Church. All the structures that I'm going to talk about right now is of Chennai. So Saint Mary's Church, and these all are of Chennai. So Saint Mary Church is the oldest church building by the Britishers. So oldest British church in India, and this is also called as the Westminster Abbey of the East. So before the construction of this church, there was no such praying spaces. They just took a room in a factory and called it chapel and used it for praying. So this is the first church that came up, and then this is Chepak Palace, which was designed by Paul Benfield. And Chepak Palace was built for the Nawab of Arcot. And Paul Benfield happened to be the friend of the Nawab, and he designed it for them. So if you see Chepak Palace, the material is extensively red brick, and lime plaster or lime mortar was used. So lime plaster, and this was a mixture of Indo-Islamic plus some features from the British architectural style. And the Chepak Palace consists of two blocks, the south and the north block. The south block is called Khalsa Mahal, while the north block is called Humayun Mahal. And let's move on to the next building. This is Madras High Court or Chennai High Court. So you have, let me write it as Chennai High Court, designed by Henry Irwin. So about the architectural side, again a mix of Indo-Islamic and the British features. So first off, you can see the onion dome and chhatris, and this had a symmetrical centralized planning. So symmetrical, and it had a variety of arches. So it had cusped arch, multifoil arch, horseshoe arch, among others. And because Chennai is a very hot and humid climatical area, so there were features that involved to battle the temperature or the climate of the region. So they had huge shaded verandas. Chajjas were used in a lot of places, and they had high ceilings for proper ventilation, and they used thick walls to retain the coolness of the interior space. So all these were climate responsive, you know so all these were climate responsive design changes that they did. And they also had minarets. And if you see the materials, it's again red brick. And they also used cast iron for railings. And this material, the cast iron for railings, is something that was introduced by the Britishers, and it was a product of their industrial revolution. So next we have so this is Senate House, designed by Robert Chisholm. So, and before going into the Senate Palace, there is one thing that I mixed about the High Court, which is this is the second largest judicial building in the world. So the first being the Courts of London. So this is the second largest judicial building in the world as of now. Now let's move on to the Senate House. So Senate House was designed by Robert Chisholm, and he also designed a lot of other structure. So before getting into the detail of the building, there is something that I want to talk about. So Robert Chisholm, Robert Chisholm was appointed as the first consulting architect to the government of Madras. And after him, Henry Irwin became the consulting architect to the government of Madras. So a lot of structures could be that are found in Chennai can be attributed to either Robert Chisholm or Henry Irwin. So now let's talk about the Senate House. So Senate House has a lot of influence from the Byzantine era. Byzantine influence was seen a lot, like the use of mosaics for floor, or the use of ornamentation on the interior of the domes, and many other. So this was a rectangular plan with 4 domed halls. Okay, and the main hall, which is the convocation hall, has a double height with the grand dome above it, and all the domes are ribbed and ribbed plus ornamented. And in the drum of the domes, clear story lighting have been used. So that is Senate House. And some of the important structures of the Chennai, Indo Saracenic buildings of the Chennai, are the Ripon building, Egmore Museum, Egmore Railway Station, Presidency College, and this so on. So these are some of the few important examples of Indo Saracenic architecture in Chennai. Let's move on to Kolkata. So Kolkata or Calcutta, that was called that's how it was called in the British time. So it was ruled by the Britishers for a very long time until the Nawab of Bengal invaded or attacked, and then he literally drove the Britishers away from it and took power. And just a year later, the Britishers attacked again, and they gained power over Calcutta or Calcutta, and it was the capital of British India until 1900s. So this was our capital of British India until 1911. And after they gained power, they built Fort William. And this was built along the river of Hooghly. So this is Hooghly River, and you can see that it had a weird star shaped plan. And they also used a dry moat. Initially it was supplied with water from the Hooghly River, but then it became dry moat. So dry moat, or they call it as ditch. So they had dry moat and ditch, and the area around the fort was cleared, and it became the grounds for exhibitions and fairs and other such stuff. So the main purpose for this fort is basically to prevent attacks from the invaders, and that's what it served. Next, let's move on to the next building, which is Writers Building. Writers Building, this was designed by Thomas Lynn or Lyne. So it was the dwelling place for the writers of the East India Company. So writers of East India Company, and this is also the first 3-storied building in Kolkata, and that is of importance. So they used Corinthian columns, and they used a lot of Greek gods in their facade, sculptures of Greek gods or statues of Greek gods. And that is about our Writers Building. Let's move on to our next building, which is the Victoria Memorial Hall. As the name suggests, this was built after the death of Queen Victoria, in memory of her, and this was designed by or built by William Emerson. So the important features is this is built around a garden which was in the charbagh style. And the material that they used is Makrana marble, and which is the same marble that is used even in our Taj Mahal. And the dome is inspired from St. Paul Cathedral. And above this dome you can find a copper statue of victory which rotates in air. And they also used Corinthian columns. And so that's about our Victoria Memorial. And some other important buildings in Kolkata would be the Indian Museum, so this is the oldest and one of the largest museums in India, so that's there. And there is also a marble palace which was the resident of the Viceroy of British era. So those are two other examples of the Kolkata Indo Saracenic architecture. Now let's move on to Mumbai. So the first building that I'm gonna talk about is Chhatrapati Shivaji Terminus, or it was called as Victoria Terminus at that time, and this was designed by F.W. Stevens. This had a lot of Gothic revival style in it. More than Indo-Saracenic, most of the structures in Bombay, except few, had Gothic revival style in them, or Victorian, or sometimes even Venetian Gothic. So that's about it. Then we have our Bombay Secretariat. I'm not sure if this building still stands. So we have Bombay Secretariat, which was designed by Henry Saint Clair, and again he designed it in the Venetian Gothic style, and he also used mangrove tiles for the roof. Now let's move on to the Gateway of India. And this was designed by George Whitted, and basically they designed this building to honor the visit of King George V and Queen Mary to India. And this is built using yellow basalt stone, and this was more leaning towards the Indo Saracenic than the Gothic revival architecture. So that's about Mumbai, and let's finally move on to Delhi. So once the Mughals weakened and they lost their power, basically the British Empire took over after it defeated the Marathas. And some of the important buildings that they designed is, so this is Vidhan Sabha, or the Old Secretariat, or the Legislative Assembly, and this was designed by E. Montague Thomas, and this is flanked by two minarets on both its end, and this set the example of how bungalows are built in the upcoming time. So this is Vidhan Sabha, or the Legislative Assembly, or the Old Secretariat of Delhi. Then once the British Empire defeated the Marathas and took over Delhi, it made Delhi their capital. Like it shifted from Kolkata to Delhi, the capital, and they named it as New Delhi. And the city of that was planned by Edward Lutyens, and he designed a lot of structures in Delhi. And one of the important element that he created would be this, which is the Delhi Order of Column, which was designed by Lutyens. So what he did is he used bells instead of the scroll that we usually have. So he used bells. And Lutyens was also a person who really loved the local architecture or the Indian style of architecture and tried to incorporate it as much as possible. So this is a building that was designed by Edward Lutyens and Herbert Baker. This is our Sansad Bhavan, or the House of Parliament. And this Sansad Bhavan is said to be resembling our Ashoka Chakra. And the railings are said to be, a replicate of the stupa of Sanchi. So that is about Sansad Bhavan. Then we can move on to Connaught Place. So Connaught Place was designed by Robert Russell. And this Connaught Place was inspired by the Crescent of Bath from London. If you see the picture, you can see how oddly familiar they both look. So Crescent of London Bath were inspired Connaught Place, and Crescent of Bath London was designed by John Nash. And Robert Russell also designed the Teen Murti House or Teen Murti Bhavan, which at that time housed the commander-in-chief of the British Army. Later, it was the residence of Jawaharlal Nehru for 16 years. So, and we are done with our Indo Saracenic architecture.